Hi everybody, and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to discuss about depression and anxiety and getting out of debt, and how sometimes when you're in that mode of getting out of debt and you don't have as much to do in life because you can't spend as much money, depression can oftentimes really affect us. It affected me. And so when we didn't have the money to spend to do things, we were faced with doing things at home. Now, we were deep in debt, and I won't go deep into that story because I already did that story many times, and I'll share that at the end of this video. But as we were paring down all of our expenses, we were living at home more. We became homebodies because every time we left our house, it cost us money almost. And so we tended to be at home more. And so we took our properties and we turned them into beautiful places. And we kept downsizing until we reached to this property. And I've been here 13 years now. So we've been here 13 years. And now this property is just exploding and blooming into something beautiful. But it took 13 years to get to this point. When we moved into this property was not very nice looking. It had a lot of issues and problems with it, and it needed a lot of work. Most of the work was physical work, cleanup. I think we went through 8 different truckloads of debris that was scattered all throughout the property, from beds to metal to old stoves. I mean, this property was basically a junkyard. And so a lot of it was just physical labor. And then, as you know, each year we did some things to our home to, restore it. And we are restoring it. A 1963 double wide, we want to restore it because there's value in the oldness of it, because there's so many things that we could do to restore it. And also, there's not many old mobile homes these days. And so we are restoring our mobile home inside and out. But over the time when we didn't have the money to spend on things, I remember for me it was really hard because I was used to having a fairly easy life. And when I say that, I mean we went out to eat a lot. So we would go out to eat a couple times a week sometimes. And for me, that was fun because I didn't have to cook, I didn't have to clean, I didn't have to do anything, and then we did a lot of things for entertainment. Our children were into country living, and we loved going to rodeos and all of that. Now, my children were married by the time it got to the point where we really wanted to get out of debt. So it was just hubby and I, and so it made it a lot easier. Our lifestyle really became different. So we got into homesteading, and we got into, having chickens and learning a different a lifestyle, a life skill. But I remember thinking of the old days every once in a while, and I remember thinking, I miss that. And so depression would kind of hit a little bit because you would see your friends and your families and everyone around you, and to my eyes, everyone around me, they were living the high life, They were doing all of these things, and I couldn't do it. We sold our beautiful lifted trucks that were like new, and we bought a really rusty old truck. Hey, that truck lasted us a long time. And we would have to go to family get-togethers, and all of a sudden we didn't have these fancy trucks anymore. I remember I had a lot of humility. We were humble. We paid off our debt one bill at a time. So what we did was our highest amount of debt. Of course, we had homes. We had many homes that we fixed up and that they were on the market. And so we would pay off our debts. As the smaller the debt, then the bigger the debt. So it was a snowball effect. And it was like Dave Ramsey who says, you pay off your smaller amount, then you put that money into the bigger bill, and then the bigger. Now, we only ever had one credit card. And so it wasn't like we had a lot of credit card debt. We had a lot of property debt. We had a lot of debt we could liquefy and things like that. But depression came in for me for a little bit. And I remember one day, because we lived bare nothing. So on this channel, I showed bare nothing. But when we lived back then, it was bare nothing. So I remember in my old life, I used to have Tide laundry soap. In my new life, I would make my own soap using a bar of soap. I would shred the soap and then I would add a little this and that, like you see in my videos. And I remember thinking, if only I could just have Tide soap for just 1 month. To me, I associated Tide soap with living a wealthy life, because that's how determined we were to get out of debt. We didn't spend for anything, like literally nothing. And it was such a life-changing experience for me, because I have empathy. And I have empathy for people who, you know, are living day by day. I didn't have a whole room full of canned food. I didn't have that. And I think that's why I went overboard with my canning when I was able to do so, because it's like the Great Depression to some people's minds. And for me, it was like the Great Depression in my mind, because I didn't want to ever do without again. And so when I was able to have things, I just, in my mind, I went overboard with it, because I remember what it's like when I didn't have. But yet in the days when I didn't have, I remember how it taught me so much, and I was so appreciative for what I did get. And so I still went to the thrift store, but I only had $5 back then. But that was my husband's way of saying, you need to still do a little something that you enjoy. It's just, we don't have that much money. And that was something he felt was important. And it was important because it helped keep my motivation. And it helped me feel like, you know, I lost it all. Now, we didn't lose anything. We sold everything freely to get out of debt. But it was that point where I had that little something. And so a lot of things that we did is like this bowl of apples. And this bowl of apples represents lessons that I have learned. Because this bowl of apple has a lot of blemishes. There's a lot of spots on it that aren't very nice. These are not nice apples. We have a lot of spots here that need to be removed. And in my olden days, a bowl of apples like this, I would have tossed away because I could just get new ones. But when we were living to get debt-free, we kept everything that we could and we used it up. And I still live that way to this day. And for me, it was just a time period. The depression for me was not very long, and it was only for the first about 8 weeks, because that's the hardest. When you make any change in your life, the first 8 weeks are your hardest, because it hits you hard, because all of a sudden it's like one day you're doing this, and then one day you're doing this. It's the same with weight loss or any kind of life-changing experience. The first couple weeks are always the hardest. And then as you get into a routine and as you start exploring things, then it gets easier and easier until it's your lifestyle. And that is why I live that way now, because it's become my lifestyle and it's given me so much more happiness. So the depression era, when I say depression, it wasn't like depression where I couldn't get out of bed. And the depression for me was just a transition, because, you know, in the Bible, Jesus talks a lot about, you know, what is curses can be meant for blessings. And while there was a lot of things I thought were curses at the time, they turned into great blessings. And it has turned into a great blessing. I have a YouTube channel. I would have never, ever thought I would ever have a YouTube channel. In fact, I didn't even know what it was. When we first started getting out of debt, I didn't have the internet. I didn't know what YouTube was in the beginning. And then our daughter showed me YouTube, and I started looking at YouTube when I would visit their house because they had the internet. And I would start seeing, oh, wait a minute, you can do this and you can do that and you can do this. And then when we first moved here, I realized, hey, I'm not alone. There are other people that are living in really different circumstances with their home. And then I started looking about off-grid. Well, okay, I'm not off-grid, but there's parts of my life that were off-grid. And I thought, how can I do that? Then it became a game. Instead of it was a pity, woe is me, it became a game. And it is a game to see, what can you do with what you got? What can you do with the bowl full of apples that have lots of bad spots in them? Instead of throwing out your back shoulder instead of throwing them away, use them and find recipes of using them. And so those were the lessons that I've learned. And if you are in that mindset of you want to get out of debt, it is not easy, because being in debt is a habit. It's a bad habit, because you think you want something now and you can pay for it later. But when you start getting out of debt, you have such a freedom. I cannot explain to you how free I feel because I'm not in debt. And I don't have to worry about when the bills come. And I don't have to worry about all of these things. But I realized back then our debt was not because, most of it was not because we lived a high society life. It was just because we had different businesses, and the economy didn't work out very well with those businesses, and we were not living in our means. So we were living above our means. You know, we should not have been going out to eat like we were, and we shouldn't have been doing some things like we did. But those are all lessons. And those are lessons that I will take with me forever. And I just feel so free to be me. And I'm just so extremely happy to share with you my life, because it continues to share with you really, really discount living.
Thanks for watching Homestead Tessie. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos.